everyone, and welcome to Can I Just Say? I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive, and this week we are talking about one of my favorite films, Moonstruck, which I feel like we have been talking about forever.
I feel like
saying we should do this,
doing this one, for sure.
And we finally did, and I like this one. The funny thing I want to say before we start is, I started to realize that, especially after last week where we talked about Begin Again and the whole, splitter and the exposing other people to your playlist.
Yes, that it exposes a little bit of your soul and makes you feel vulnerable.
Yeah, a little bit. So for me, I love music, but my thing has always been film. So for me, I started to realize, this is me basically doing this with you and all of the listeners. Every time I pick one of the films that's kind of a foundational film in my sense of self.
Of course.
We've done a few of those. So yes, I'm not a person who usually talks that much about my private self, but I guess on some level I'm kind of doing that in the podcast, even though I'm not always being super upfront about that's what I'm doing. But yeah, Absolutely. This is one of those movies kind of for me.
Well, you'll have to walk me through that. I was going to say that everything I knew about this movie was that you liked it and that Cher and Nick Cage are in it. And that is everything I knew. I didn't even know until I watched it that the slap, snap out of it that Cher always does that I've seen a billion times came from this movie. So can you talk to us about the first time that you watched it, what your history with the movie is, or if you even remember the first time? But
I don't remember the first time.
Your history, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't look at the date either. I think is it 87?
87.
Holy shit.
87.
That was the year I finished high school.
Perfect. That sounds perfect for this kind of movie, I feel like.
So I don't remember when I saw it. I'm positive I saw it in the theater.
Great.
Because, I was...
That's right. You always saw 2 movies a week in the theaters or something for 20 years. Is that right? Am I making that up?
In 87, I didn't. I mean, that was one... I mean, this is actually very tied to my marriage in a lot of ways, because that is when my husband and I were young, we saw movies together all the time. I am positive we did not see this one together because we didn't meet until 1990. But
I'm already seeing that's clunking into place a little bit. Just knowing your history.
And yeah, this is a movie we collectively love.
Oh, really?
And the funny thing is when we did decide finally to do it, I was like, oh, great, I already own this. I own it on VHS.
Of course you do.
But it's still in my drawer because I could never toss it. I think I have 3 VHS movies still in my drawer full of DVDs.
Mm-hmm. What are the other ones?
Oh shit. I know one of them is really esoteric and weird and not not a story film. It's a documentary. Sure. Totally different interest base. But I don't actually know. I can't think what the other movie is because the top one is the Moonstruck, and I opened the drawer and I was like, "Oh,
there it was."
Yeah, there it was. I was like, "Yep, don't have this in DVD. I have this in VHS."
That's funny.
So, which also shows that I haven't watched it in a long time before we watched it now.
I actually also have a few VHSs, which is a little weird, but it's because they're plays that I was in high school and stuff that always came out on VHS. I'm like, I feel like I can't throw this away. Some child or great grandchild somewhere might be. I don't know.
I also have my wedding video on VHS.
Oh, of course.
That my Uncle Jerry filmed. The husband of our longtime listeners, the husband of Aunt Neely.
Yeah, Neely.
So, yes, he took that for us. I have that. But that's not one of the 3 I'm talking about because I think that lives somewhere else. Okay, enough about that. So yes, so I am positive that this is a film that my husband and I bonded over both loving because that was part of our kind of initial relationship was bonding over films and then seeing lots of them. I also I feel like I need to say a thing about Nicolas Cage.
Is it that he's terrible in this movie and very, very bad and not talented for another 10 years?
No, that's not what I was going to say.
Sorry, that's how I feel.
Okay, we're going to...
Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. I want to talk about... I actually want to fold that into his performance into something else. Because actually, he was already good when this movie came out. Yeah, he was already a good actor. Like, oh shit, I didn't look at his IMDb, and maybe I should check right now just to back up my claim.
Arizona was around here too, wasn't it? Yeah, which I still haven't seen, but have obviously heard so many things about.
All right, just give me 1 second to IMDb him, and we can discuss his performance. But I posit that the way he did his performance is actually very intentional.
Oh, I think it's intentional. I just don't think it's good.
Oh, fair enough. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly doing a thing. He's making choices.
Well, he is making choices. My argument is he's making choices as someone who already knows how to act. Because you said that he doesn't get good for another 10 years. So okay. And it's funny because that's not what I was going to say about Nicolas Cage. The funny thing is, Raising Arizona is the same year.
Oh, really?
Birdie was before this. And I don't know if you've seen Birdie.
Never even heard of Birdie.
Oh, Birdie is really good.
Really? Okay.
The Cotton Club was before this. Wait, but the movie I'm looking for, Rumblefish, was before this.
Rumblefish, the S.E. Hinton? I can't imagine another thing being titled Rumblefish besides the S.E. Hinton novel.
Oh, yeah, I think it is based on that, which I've never read. Yeah.
Okay.
So he did some interesting stuff before this. Birdie is the one I would call out particularly, and you should see it. It's amazing.
Okay. All right.
God,
well,
Peggy Sue got married.
Corrected then. Peggy Sue got married. Okay. All right. I love Peggy Sue Got Married.
The funny thing about what you said about the 10 years is, now that I have it here, I'm going to look for when is Leaving Las Vegas, is 1995. So the interesting thing is that I usually talk to people who hate him.
Oh.
And I know that some people are creeped out by him, and that's totally fine. Like I have that thing with, what's his name?
Costner?
No.
He's the two that always seem to go hand in hand, where people are like,
God.
These are the two.
No, I don't have any strong feelings about Kevin Costner. No. What's his, from Little Women?
Christian Bale.
Right. I have that with Christian Bale. I have like an irrational being creeped out by Christian Bale. I can't put my finger on why it is. He just creeps me out always.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of people seem to have that with Nicolas Cage. But also what's interesting is that a lot of people, like, Leaving Las Vegas was kind of when I stopped being interested in him. And I feel like a lot of people mostly know his career after that. So it was like before that, he did all of these like weird, quirky characters and neat films. And like we collectively as a family, my husband and I were like such fans of him. Mm-hmm. And then Leaving Las Vegas happened, and then he just, went down the Con Air road and like...
Sure.
And it was just like, it's like, we partly kind of wanted to continue to love him ever since then, but it was always this feeling like, dude, he just should have been a character actor that took that road and did really interesting stuff, and he had it in him to do that, and he, for whatever reasons, he didn't do it.
Didn't.
Which is his right. I'm just saying, but it's just so interesting. It's always, I feel like I always have to convince people the opposite thing of what you're saying is that, like, convince people that he actually was good once.
Yeah.
And not just like action figure, but he doesn't do that very well because he's not really a leading man type.
No.
At all. He's a little too creepy to be a leading man.
Yeah. I don't know. There have been things I've really enjoyed him in. I really enjoyed him in Gone in 60 Seconds was a lot of fun, the remake. Family Man with Téa Leoni, I thought he was quite sweet in. And
Face Off. He was amazing in Face Off. And that was him. That was him. Like, I'm looking at the IMDb right now.
Oh, my God.
Face Off was him, like, absolutely using what Nicolas Cage is best at.
Sure.
And he was good. I mean, both of them. I think that he and John Travolta were, like, incredible at playing themselves and then playing each other, playing those characters.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Oh, my God.
I really love that movie.
Forever. I think I saw that in theaters and not since. So I must have been in like junior high.
Okay, enough about this. But yes, he is a bit of
all that.
He is a bit of a cult figure in our family.
Yes.
Also, my husband and his group of friends love the movie Wild at Heart so much.
Oh,
and like when I met him, it was in 1990, so it had just come out, and they just spent a lot of time quoting his character.
That's hysterical.
So I feel like Nicolas Cage is like folded into my experience of falling in love and getting married, very much so. But the other, so I don't remember when I first saw it. I do remember that. I remember that we watched it many times and loved it a lot. Do you want to hear how this feels personal to me personally.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess it's so interesting. Like, it's interesting to have seen this right after Begin Again, because it's another New York film, but so different.
Yes.
It's
yes.
interesting.
Although also very New York. I felt like this one, too, was very true to New York.
Right. Well, this is very New York also because it's Italians. I mean, even though, and I want to get into this in a little bit, like, even though it's like a little bit, not caricature exactly, but almost like storybook version, like not storybook either. That's not the word I'm looking for either. I will get into like how I see the representation of them now.
Okay,
but this is also very interesting. Was very interesting for me to see now and kind of look for why it spoke to me so much. So anyone who's listened to our conversation about The Godfather, I get into this a lot, like talking about. Because my family's Jewish, and there's just a lot of commonalities of the groups, the cultural groups, even though we're all very different, but there are some commonalities of the cultural groups from kind of Southern and Eastern Europe who immigrated to the U.S. in in large groups.
On the East Coast, right?
Right, and particularly on the East Coast, and who, late 1800s, early 1900s. We've all been kind of grouped together, but there are some commonalities. So like the part of it is just this, like, I watch a movie like this who was made by, I didn't say this, by Norman Jewison, which I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So he's Jewish.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
His last name is Jewison. And yeah, part of the cast, Olympia Dukakis is Greek, like Nicolas Cage is Italian. There's just like it almost feels like that. It's like a melting pot of people from those groups.
Sure.
Even though it's, nominally at least Italian. And yeah, it just has that feeling to it of just like, that like weird brass warmth, the like fieriness and the embrace and all of that stuff that just feels very, very, very much like home to me. And in addition, I texted my Aunt Neely today because I just, on an even more personal note, I realized that families with very practical minded women,
yes,
in love with very, very emotional men, is let's just say that's super recognizable for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely.
In my immigrant family, of where I am also the third generation, just like Loretta.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the personal side of this.
Yeah.
So tell me how you felt about it, because I have been on pins and needles. We have not talked about this.
No, it's so perfect that you would say that, because that's exactly why I had trouble with the first probably 15 minutes of this movie, because that is not my milieu at all. Like, that is not what my family is like. I am from the Midwest, and I am from Oklahoma, and everybody is oh hun and y'all and sweet and nice and extra polite, and this whole like, God, I hate you, I'm gonna smack you and kiss your face. I'm just like, are we good though? Like, do you hate me? Do you like me? So I feel like watching the beginning part, I was just frustrated, feeling like, okay, none of these people seem to have any respect for one another. And that makes me feel like it's unsafe. I don't know how to put it exactly.
No, I totally get that. That's so interesting. I love this.
It took me a minute.
I never thought of this as like a culturally specific movie because it reads to me as my culture. Like every once in a while, even though I'm a cultural minority in this country, every once in a while I get to have that moment where I just think something is universal because it speaks to me. And it's just like most people in America have that experience all the time. I don't, but like, because I was watching it, also thinking about you watching it, I was like, oh my God, this is that thing where like it feels normal to me. It feels universal because it speaks to me.
Of course.
Again, not that my family there's this much yelling or slapping or anything, but you know what I mean? Just like the raised voices, the talking over each other, like
of course.
The half sentences, all of that stuff feels so natural to me.
Uh-huh.
Okay, go on. Sorry. See? I just interrupted you. Exactly.
It was perfect. No.
Exactly like my culture.
In fact, I should say I liked Loretta right away. She was very practical and no nonsense, but I just liked her. I liked her immediately. I wasn't super taken with Cher as an actor, I suppose, but she grew on me as it went on, and I loved Loretta. So that was really great. When we first met Ronnie, Nick Cage's character, I hated that bastard. Hate that guy. Wow. The whole like, I lost my hand. It's like, quit your whining. Are you kidding me? Grow up. How many years ago was this? And then there's the girl who's just like, he's so tormented and I'm so in love with him. I was like, oh, gag me. I hate this. Okay. But then, guess when I turned around, Daphne? I bet you $100 million that you can tell me the exact moment where I was like, oh, no. Okay, wait, I'm in.
Okay, it's when they're sitting at the table and telling each other who they are. I'm not sure which line, but it might be the like whole thing about chewing off his foot.
That whole bit, yes.
Yep.
That whole story right there. And then he says, what are you doing? And she says, I'm telling you who you are. And he's like, well, stop that. And then knocks over the whole table and picks, oh God. I was like, okay, nope, I'm here now. All right. Yes. I don't know what this movie is, but this one I like.
Right. A wolf without a wife without a head, a wolf without a foot.
That was very good. There was some very excellent high romance in this movie, which at first felt really atonal until after I had seen the whole thing and realized that contrast was like the whole purpose. Like that's the whole thing that they're doing.
Yep. Okay.
So then I was delighted.
Oh, yay. Yeah. Okay. And I told you to watch it only once. I did.
Oh, did you tell me to watch it only once?
Did you watch it? I did.
I only watched it once, but I didn't remember that you said to watch it only once.
Okay, so now can I take you on a little tour of the very first scene, which I did actually tweet about this morning, that the very first scene does that magical thing in a movie where the first scene shows you everything you need to know. Like, it tells you what the whole movie's about, but you only realize that when you rewatch it. That
makes sense, because there were certain things that it seemed to me that they were calling back to. Right. So go ahead. Yeah. Walk me through it.
I love this. I mean, this is like, again, it's just a neat thing to go back to things you love. Like, and every time we do this, I do this with fear, like going back to the things that I just loved and I don't necessarily know why. Yep. And then to go back and look at them critically this way scares the shit out of me every time.
Especially something from several decades ago when we've grown so much as like what's acceptable. And yes, absolutely. I completely understand.
Yeah. I learned so much about it. So, okay. So the first scene, literally, it's like you could when you're first watching it not even remember it. Like, do you even remember where this movie starts?
I remember what I remember right away is seeing everything for the opera, for the Met, because boy howdy was I waiting for that opera for a very long time. It delivered when it finly got there, thank goodness. Right. But I was like, stop teasing me about this opera and then taking me to delis. Like, what is happening here? So.
But they're Italian.
Because New York.
I'm like, get me to all those delis. I love this.
I know, and I do want to go to the delis. So yeah, wrong. I was just saying for the movie.
No, I can vouch.
La Boheme? We're supposed to be at La Boheme.
Right. I can vouch that you definitely wanted that. Okay, so we start in a funeral home. Like, this movie is all about death. We start in a funeral home. We start with the whatever funeral home owner person.
Mortician?
Mortician. Thank you. So. That's what it's called. Yeah. He's going on and on about what a beautiful job he did of reconstructing this person, and she's like, just wants to talk about money. She's just like, so we've got already this setup of like the man who's like head in the clouds only thinks about art and beauty, and Loretta's just like is like practical. Yeah. And then the guy comes in with the roses. And he talks about how romantic roses are. And Loretta also, she's like, "Foo, I don't,
yeah.
Don't talk to me about this stuff." And then he teases her a little and she says, "Oh, no, I love flowers," but like in a Loretta way.
Yes.
And then what he does is he hands her one of the roses and you see her turn away from them, turn away from us. And she looks at the rose and she's like loving that rose. And then she looks to the mirror behind her. So we can't see her face. We only see her in the mirror. And she's wistfully holding this rose to her cheek and loving the hell out of it.
Oh my God. Yeah, I totally missed that.
So it's just like, that's it.
There was just a lot happening.
You just watched the whole film.
Basically, yeah.
In one scene.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And what I wanted to say about the way I see this film in this one scene is that this film is 100% about Loretta. I mean, it's about a lot of people. There are a lot of characters, but like, I think it would be easy to think that Ronnie somehow like unlocked Loretta, but I think that Loretta unlocked herself.
I think that is completely accurate. Yeah. Plus, I don't want to give Ronnie the benefit of the doubt on that one because I didn't like him very much. So.
Oh, I don't not like
first.
him.
Right. He grew on me. He grew on me. He did.
I mean, again, they're both very flawed, and you know, and it's that thing that
I love them as a couple.
Right,
I love them
exactly.
Together. No, I do.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
All that matters because Ronnie exists in this story for Loretta.
For Loretta, sure.
And so that's what matters. What matters is that we see how, you know, he gives her the spark. Like he's kind of her muse in in finding herself, but all of the finding herself is for herself, which is what I love about it.
One of the best little makeover sequences I've ever seen too, because usually they take forever. They're doing the whole montage of like the eyes and the brows, and they did a little bit of that, but they also had dialogue, which was nice. Yes. It wasn't just like,
because it was like women's community. It was so beautiful.
Yes, exactly. And it was about her. I don't know. It made it more of a character moment and not just like the makeover reveal is so tropey, you know, but this felt much more intentional and much more specific and much more intimate, I think, than those things usually do. And when she stepped out of the salon, I just, it wasn't that usual like, oh, wow, she looks great. But this excitement for her to have found herself a little bit better, to be in her skin in a way that she wasn't before.
So yeah, I have a few things to say about that. And then I want to talk about like a larger thing about the structure of the film. Sure. But the things that I love about that scene are like definitely the women's community. What I especially love about it is like, it is 100% for her. Like they already had sex. He already declared that he loves her.
That's
like,
right.
He's already obsessed with her. They've already made the date to go to the opera together. And that was supposed to be the last time they see each other. And what I love about it is I think you can almost see that Loretta has convinced herself that maybe she's doing this for him because he made this big deal out of like, I love two things, please give me this one night. And so that's what, again, that's what kind of like freed her to make this choice, because it felt like she wasn't being self-indulgent, but you see in her experience and in her face when she walks out that this was 100% for her. Like
I completely agree.
And that's why I'm saying I think Cher is a fantastic actor. And I think that like she manages in her face when she walks out of that salon to completely express how that thing. Like this isn't like me like, oh, I'm fixing my hair because I want to be pretty for this like probably younger man. This was her like going, I feel great now.
Well, and I think that we get that cemented a little bit I think that's textual in the script when they get to the opera and he sees her with the dress and everything and says, thank you. And she's like, for what? And she really doesn't seem to know. No. But I love that he recognizes like, well, for the hair and for the dress and for, like, you know, making this so magical. It was pretty lovely.
Right. It's so balanced, this sense of like, and that's what I also love. Okay. We'll get to the structural thing, but like, that's what I also love about the whole opera part is like, there's this complete give and take with both of them, that they are clearly doing something for themselves, but also happy that it is gratifying for the other person at the same time. Yeah. And it's, I feel like so rarely in a film you get that. Like usually I feel like you have to make a choice. Like, do I think the character is doing this for themselves or are they doing it for the other person? And this whole bit with the opera, in addition to being gorgeous and wonderful, they somehow managed to get that balance perfect, where both of them were doing something for themselves and for the other person. Yeah. And I never felt like there was any conflict there. Like we lived in a harmonious moment where you could actually do something completely for yourself and completely for your partner at the same time.
That's gorgeous. Yeah.
And that's why they're a great couple. Like that's what works. I mean, there are many aspects of their relationship through this story that are like, ooh, this is really like so exciting because it feels so right.
Yeah. I loved her crying at the opera. That was quite beautiful.
Oh God, it's so beautiful. Right. And so that's then the mirror to her looking in the mirror is that we had in the first scene, we had her hiding her emotions and holding them just for herself so that she could see them in the mirror, but no one else could see them. And then in the opera, she is actively showing him and us herself being moved. Even after in the beginning, she was like still resisting. She was like, I don't get this. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I love this stuff. So can I talk about the big thing that I kind of started to feel about it? And this ties into the Nicolas Cage performance.
Yeah, definitely.
I started to realize, I mean, there's always been this question in my mind, and we talked about this also with The Godfather, like, neither of us are Italian. Like, you know, the whole authenticity question. And I think that this film is intentionally inauthentic in many ways. Like, again, tying into these kind of immigrant things, but like the music is exactly the music you would expect and all of this.
It's kind of in Technicolor, if you want to put it that way. Like it's...
Right. And not caricature is not the word I'm looking for. It is exaggerated. And that's what I started to realize, that perhaps if you look at this as a bit of a fairy tale.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. So we have a lot of things like that. We have wolf. We have a lot of signifiers for that.
Everything about the magic of the moon, which I loved. That was really fun, actually.
Right. So there's all these things. Like, so we have death almost as a character. We have the concept of the wolf, concept of love. Like, it is a concept. It's something that people talk about all the time. Right. And so that way, if you bring us back to the first bit with Nicolas Cage, where he is like a wolf. I mean, she says it a little bit later, but he is like a wolf, and he's like in a dungeon. Yeah. And he's doing this, not only, you know, this kind of like weird and scary and inauthentic feeling performance, but he's, especially because you have the young woman who's like, he's so tragic and I love him. Mm-hmm. It is specifically hitting the chimes of the romantic, the Byronic hero, like the romantic tragic man.
Of course, sure.
So it's like hitting that hard. I mean, again, that can aesthetically work for you or not work for you. For me, it works because that's part of this whole story is like I said, like these emotional, big R romantic men and these practical women. And you could read it as saying, oh, you know, those men are so absurd and all they needed was a practical woman. But that's not true, because the story really is about a practical woman allowing emotion back into her life. So again, this becomes a story of the wolf helping, you know, the young maiden. I mean, she's not a maiden, but you know what I mean? But like a wolf helping her actually being her spark, like helping her find herself. And so I love that it like kind of brings in the thing that you might want to go to, like that young woman does, of like romanticizing that guy. And then it tosses it out immediately. Like it just makes it into like, it makes it absurd. Like it makes that person absurd. Mm-hmm. And then basically Loretta's like, yeah, can you just stop with that? And let's like have real emotion and real talk about who we are.
Right.
And so that's why I do like it, because he doesn't continue with that performance. I mean, again, you can say that Nicolas Cage is great or not great or somewhere in between. But I think that opening scene is exaggerated on purpose.
I would agree with that. And I like it actually thinking about it as like howling, like as a wounded animal howling. That's actually a nice way to look at that performance. Right.
So he is like a Rochester. He is, you know, he's that guy.
Interesting.
And then we toss that guy out. We're like, no, we don't actually value that person.
Which is good. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then we say, like, you can be damaged, but she calls him on him. She's like, why do you think you're the only person who's had experiences and feelings and been hurt? Mm-hmm. So it's like, stop, you know, and again, it's almost like just like being this practical person is like her little cave that she built for herself where she feels safe. He like his like, you know, grand, I lost my hand is like, doesn't feel like a cave, but it is. It's like the cave that he built for himself down there, making bread, the bread of life.
They told it.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I'm just super amused by that scene. I love that scene.
It is amusing and smart, and there are a lot of little touchstones to fairy tales and classic literature. There's a lot of that there, and a lot of tropes that they're playing on pretty heavy. Certain things I feel like I wasn't sure what they were doing. What is the character of the man? He's Marty from Frasier, who is at the restaurant, who's the professor.
Yes.
Who's always there with the young women. That is such a weird little running bit that nonetheless ended up delighting me at the end of it. By the end of it, I really liked that whole thing. But I would like to talk about it and kind of unpick it a little bit, just because.
Okay, let's do that. Yeah, absolutely.
It surprised me because at first I was just so frustrated. We're so frustrated where first Loretta and then Loretta's mother were like, oh, well, she's just too young for you. I'm like, yeah, but also he's an asshole. Like, let's not let that just go unsaid, and you're being disrespectful and kind of a dick. So.
Well, which Rose says all those things to him, but she just says it in a gentler way.
Does she? Does she call him out?
Oh, yeah. She says, you're a little boy and you like to be bad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I suppose so. I didn't see that necessarily as a calling out on the misogynistic behavior, but what I liked,
but she doesn't come. I don't think she comes from a. I mean, she's definitely investigating gender in some ways, although but in her own way, like in a generationally appropriate way from the place where she is. Yeah, she is that in between, like the children of the immigrants. Like she's that has one foot in the traditional culture and one foot, in the newer culture, and each generation gets a little bit.
She's got that gorgeous line where he asks, if she can invite him in. And she says, no, because I'm married and because I know who I am.
Exactly.
Which was gorgeous. That was really resonant and thematic, I thought. That was a surprising little gem of a moment in the whole thing.
I knew you would like that one.
Yeah, I liked that very much.
Yeah, I know. Seriously,
wow.
Cheers to Olympia Dukakis. That woman is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
She is incredible. Yes, and I think, again, that is... I mean, look how she confronts her husband. Like, she knows who she is, and she knows what she needs to say, and she doesn't need to be the person who... She doesn't freak out ever. I mean, that's just who her character is. She doesn't yell ever. She doesn't, she speaks in a strong voice because of her culture, but she doesn't freak out ever. She manages everyone with this calm. And what I love about that is, we are jumping all over, but that's what we do. That's fine. Is that thing where she tells her husband she wants him to stop seeing that woman, and he says his thing about a life built on nothing, and she said, your life is not built on nothing. I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who she is that she knows who she is. Loretta doesn't know she is. And so I think it's really important to have we have these two women where one knows who she is absolutely, and one needs to find who she is.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But again, I think that Rose is so clear on what is important that the biggest slap in the face that she has for... God, I can't remember his name. Right, our crappy man.
The Marty guy, right?
Yeah, the Marty guy. Yeah,
I can't
exactly.
His name. I'm sorry.
I know. It's okay.
What's Frasier name?
Right.
I used to know that actor's name too. John something maybe. Anyway.
Oh, John Mahoney. That's his name.
John Mahoney is the actor's name. Yeah,
that's what I wrote. I wrote John Mahoney character.
John Mahoney character. Exactly.
Is that the biggest slap in his face is that he's not actually important to her.
That's true.
She doesn't even bother with trying to teach him and that's why I love that we see him after she's left him.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we see this exchange where she says she's married and she knows who she is.
Yeah.
And then he tries again and she just walks away from him, and then we see him by himself. And that's what we were supposed to see, is that they all live in this world of love and family, and yes, chaos, and yes, messing up, and yes, fighting and all of this. But we see all of them together in the kitchen.
Yeah,
that's where we end with this family. This is where everything happened in this family. I want to talk about that too. But that was his rebuke. His rebuke was that he was standing on a cold street by himself, and that even Johnny, even though he's like a mess, like he's the only character, like he exists, I think, only as an archetype. Like there is a lot of archetypal things going on here, and I think he only exists as that, which is fine. Don't care. But he exists so that Loretta and
Ronnie can meet.
Ronnie can talk about him.
Yes.
But even he, because he's part of them, like even though they just decide not to get married, and then he's like, "What?" Like even so, like they fold him back into the family at the very end to do this toast.
Yes, even in the family picture, the family portrait that they have at the very end for the credit scene, which was lovely.
So that's what I'm trying to say is like that was his rebuke, and I think that's fine. I think he got his just desserts. I think that the film is pretty clear on how the film feels about whatever John Mahoney's character.
About John Mahoney's character, yes. No, he is not to be lauded or applauded.
Right. Asshole
figure.
Professor guy. We can just call him that. See, we don't even know his name because he doesn't matter. And that was his rebuke, was that he's an asshole. He's not really part of this story.
Yeah, just somebody else who needs to grow up. Yeah,
right.
That's interesting.
Exactly. And he exists for Rose. I mean, Rose has this search. She has this quest to like figure out what the fuck is up with men and death. Like she talks about death. Her first line is who died. When they wake her up in the middle of the night.
That's right.
She says who died.
That's so interesting. Yeah. And when she says to Cosmo, I got news for you. You're going to die just like everybody else, no matter what you do or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah. She's very interesting.
She's constantly, and she keeps asking, like, do men chase after women because of death?
Because they're afraid of death.
And she talks about Cosmo keeping his money because he is afraid of death.
Yes, exactly.
She's our philosopher. I mean, she's like, Definitely. She is the philosopher of this story. And I love it because she's kind of like, in most stories, is like the last person who would have the role of the philosopher. Like not just wise woman. She's a wise woman. Yes, she's very wise, but she's the philosopher. She's not just the like mother figure who's handing down wisdom. Right. She's the person who's actively seeking out understanding of humanity. Yeah. And you can see how Loretta is as insightful as she is. I mean, about everyone else and less so about herself in the beginning.
Of course. But that's how it goes.
Right. But you can see that those are tied together too. I also love that. Like I love that as an extremely practical woman who also is really, really interested in investigating human nature and like the greater philosophies of humanity. I love seeing women like that because usually that role is given to a man. Usually that role is given like in different ways. It can be an older man, but it also could be the romantic young man. Like that could be part of his job is like that the idea that like that searching for greater truths is something that is only the property of the romantic.
Sure.
Sorry, wait, am I getting the R's?
Capital
the big R. Yeah, the capital R romantics. Right.
Yes.
And so I feel like this. I mean, this is now going to be the second time I bring up Jane Eyre. Like, I feel like it's doing a little bit of the same commentary as Jane Eyre of saying, no, actually, the big R romantic, who's so self-involved, can actually be the person who is blind.
Sure.
And that the person who's able to see and investigate and make these larger connections is someone who, again, not devoid of big or small R romantic feelings, but is like has the practicality to see like that you have to actually right. You have to see outside of yourself in order to see the larger picture.
Right.
And
no, I think that's very good.
And you have to know yourself. I mean, that's the other thing is like the idea that only once you know yourself and you're comfortable in your own skin can you actually start looking outside of yourself.
Right.
I really love Rose.
She's fantastic. No, I agree. And I love the actress who you said was Olivia. What did you say?
Olympia Dukakis.
Olympia Dukakis. She was fabulous.
Yes. Oh, right. I wanted to say one other thing about the makeover, which we didn't touch on. We talked about the hair salon part. The other part of the makeover that I love, again, like back to this idea that we're playing with tropes.
Yes.
Is that after the makeover, she gets home to an empty house, and then we have the exact construction of the romantic
sex scene,
right by the fireplace, right,
which
with
is
the soft
gorgeous.
light and the music and all of that. And it's just Loretta getting to know herself, like just being with herself.
Yes.
And
don't forget that right before that, when she first comes out of the shop, she runs into the two nuns, and there's the wedding dress behind her in the shop window.
Yep.
So the fact that she just blows through all of that, and then
she doesn't blow through though. She experiences.
No, she takes the moment. She takes the moment. Yeah.
Right. And then she goes and buys herself that dress.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. She makes the decision. Yeah.
And then, just she's drinking the wine. She's got like the sexy outfit, but it's just for her. That's the scene that shows you when she gets to the opera that this was for her.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There's beautiful. There's none of that. Like, again, it's she's having the romantic scene with herself, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And that's, I just love that. This is what makes me, say the things I'm saying about the first Nicolas Cage scene. It's just like all of these themes seem so deliberately constructed to remind you of other romances, other styles of romantic stories, and saying, okay, but we're going to we just need to shift a few things, and look how much this has changed meaning now.
Yeah.
Like, how do we take all of those tropes, basically, all of those, really, really, some of them really old romantic tropes, some of them just from the history of film, some of them from a larger history, and reposition them just a little bit, just a few adjustments, and show how we can reposition every one of these so that they are completely based in the experience of the woman. And again, if you make this a fairy tale, this is about her being lost and finding herself.
Yeah.
Lost in the woods of New York,
yeah,
meeting the wolf and finding herself.
Yes.
But again, that's still, it's just it's like we have all of the elements.
Yeah. Well, and that's always tied to also, the wolf with just her sexuality and her sensuality and her passion. And all of that was beautifully done in the movie. And then the couple that's like the aunt or something, the aunt and uncle who own the deli, and seeing the moon in the window. And, she's like, with this lighting and that expression on your face, you look 25 years old. And they have, oh my God, it's so romantic. That was lovely.
Well, and it's right after that story being about Cosmo, who is also a romantic man with a practical woman. Mm-hmm. And how he had said that he was angry at Cosmo because he was afraid of the moon. Like when he was a little boy, he was afraid of the moon, and he thought that Cosmo had brought the moon with his passion to threaten them, basically. Yeah. And so that's again, we're talking now about men going from finding sexuality threatening to something that they embrace.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And also when you talk about men chasing women because they're afraid of death, here's a man who is with his wife that he loves. He's not chasing some other woman. He's with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the moon has this effect of making him look younger.
Yeah, that's good.
He's not chasing a woman. He's being faithful to the woman that he loves, and passionate,
passionate. Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. Not just this droll, mundane, well, I got to be here obligation, but
exactly.
Actually.
And that's the thing I also love, is that we always have tied together in this, again, love and family, but also couplehood as part of that, and couplehood not as something chaste at all. Mm-hmm. The first time we hear about the wolf is when she's in the liquor store.
Yeah.
And that woman, the wife, is accusing him of being a wolf when he's looking at somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, I see a wolf in everyone.
Yeah.
And she's going, wolf, wolf, wolf. This is, this is probably what gets Loretta thinking about wolves.
Absolutely.
And she says wolf, and he says, do you know what I see? I see the girl I married, or the girl I fell in love with.
Yeah.
Yes. And so again, there's just this beautiful thing of this wolf nature, this just yeah, we can fuck up. Like, we're not perfect. Like, being in love with each other isn't like, I mean, ideally not cheating and taking another woman to the opera, but like, you know what I mean? Like that it's this celebration of the deeper part of love, this constancy, even when, you know, you look in a wolf way at another woman or stray. And again, I'm not advocating for women necessarily staying with a man who's been cheating on them. That is completely
your call.
Right.
Yes.
That is a decision between those two people. And I buy it in the case of Rose. Like, I buy her saying, stop seeing her, and the way that played out. But there's just this beauty. Like, I think what I'm trying to say is, like, there's this neat thing while you're watching a woman fall in love, you're also having this sense of, with these older couples, of seeing their younger selves and their now selves, like, all at once. Like, kind of like I feel like, you know, as parents, excuse me, people who don't have kids, for a second, I'm just going to use this comparison. Like, you do look at your children, and every once in a while you look at them and you actually can see their baby self and their now self at the same time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, you know, there's a similarity in long-term relationships that you can have these moments where you look at them and you see, you know, you can remember for a glimpse that moment of when you first fell in love with them and all the years in between, including, you know, the crappy stuff, like all of that stuff. Like, you can kind of see all of that at one time. And I feel like this film really does a beautiful job of expressing that. Like, I think when Harry Met Sally tries to do that, and like, it is very touching when they show the old couples talk, because I love listening to old people tell stories. So like, I've always loved that about the film. The rest of the film works less well for me.
I've still never seen it. Weirdly.
Oh, sorry.
No, this is what I was going to say about not having seen Moonstruck, is like, this whole generation of films, like anything from like, I don't know, 79 to 90 probably. There's just a lot I didn't see. There's just a lot in there. Mm-hmm.
Right. And a lot, I mean, that is an interesting thing for you, because I feel like that was an interesting time in film. Like, a movie like this would not get made now. Okay, although Begin Again is kind of like this, but like, it barely got made.
It barely got made, exactly.
Right, and this was not
not in Hollywood anyway.
Right,
you
and
might
this
be able
was
to sell it to Netflix or something, but that's about it. Mm-hmm.
That's true. Now Netflix will make stuff like that. That's true. That's true.
Yes.
But yeah, there was this period where films like this, and again, like, Nicolas Cage was not a huge star yet. Cher was.
Of course,
you know,
of
right?
course, had been.
And Norman Jewison, you know, is, I mean, I don't know if you've looked up his IMDb. I mean, he was a famous producer and director. He did like the original Crown Affair. He did yeah.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. The original film of Jesus Christ Superstar, the original Fiddler on the Roof, which I don't think I've ever seen. I used to have, right. So it's like, these were big, this was a big film. This was not some like tiny little, you know,
indie picture. Yeah.
Right. Not at all. And so that period of film had these films that would now feel small, because it's like, now the only thing that gets made are like gigantic films with gigantic casts and special effects and stuff. And this period of the late 80s, early 90s had a lot of films like this.
Yeah.
Or all of the 80s, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And I miss that kind of thing. I miss these kinds of stories.
They're beautiful. I mean, it's just, it's a lovely story, and it's not surfacey, but it's also not like demanding. It's not demanding that you go like to the bottom of your pain and sorrow as a person.
Right.
But it does tap into stuff that's really essentially human in a way that's more satisfying than something that's just a confection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. So stylistically speaking, I thought it was gorgeously shot, obviously. I love warm colors. Just anytime something is really saturated, I super love that. And specifically in this one, they had, which is one of my favorite things, and it especially seems to pop up in these immigration stories, or immigrant stories, I should say, is all the food. The food was beautiful. And the wine, too. There was food, wine, and coffee being poured from these gorgeous, elaborate copper espresso machines. All the bread that was down there, all this perfect bread. Like, it was so funny because the bakery itself was kind of crappy looking, and like down there in the cave was also super crappy looking. But
that all felt very New York to me.
And it is. No, but that's what I mean. It's just like it doesn't look like a Hollywood set. It looks like
Right.
No, we came in and borrowed this bakery for the day and just stuck it out.
And it doesn't look
here.
like Whole Foods because in a lot of neighborhoods, the best bread you're going to get is from a place like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the bread itself looked beautiful and perfect. And I remember specifically a shot of the cast iron skillet that had the toasted bread with the egg in the hole and the tomatoes.
So wait, what do you call that? Have we had that conversation? I feel like we have
Everybody
had that
calls
conversation.
something different. I
know.
about
I
it.
love that.
I grew up calling it hens in a nest.
Oh, that's what it's called in Hebrew. It's called kuku
No
baken.
way.
Yep, exactly.
Wow.
I mean, it's not
No,
hen,
I
but
learned
but a bird in a nest. That's so
nest.
funny.
Sure.
Yeah. We
No,
just
I
called
learned
it
it
egg
from
and
Girl
toast
Scouts.
in my family.
Egg
It's
and
just called
toast.
egg and toast, which is like the most clinical, least poetic version of that. I actually love hearing what different people call that thing.
Yeah. I feel like most often I hear egg in a hole, which is why that's what I said. But we called it hens in a nest growing up, which I think I may have learned from Girl Scouts, possibly, because it's like a camping food. I don't know.
That's so fun. I love that. I love that Loretta smells her food before she starts eating it. When she's first like that, it's that dish when she's first sitting down with her mom in the kitchen. She actually smells her food, which I just thought was just a great little moment. It just felt very true.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're so right. It was beautiful. All of that was gorgeous.
Also, the whole thing with the steak and feeding, like Loretta's
steak,
constantly
yes.
talking, like she's very busy managing men and food. Like she does that with both brothers.
No, you're not having the oily fish.
Right.
And yes, you're going to eat it with blood. And you're going to like it, whatever it was that she said.
You're going to eat it bloody to feed your blood. Like,
oh, yeah.
This is the other thing that I love with the immigrant thing is like this beautiful thing, this beautiful space of transition where people like don't necessarily believe stuff, but they still adhere to it. So you have that woman in the airport who's doing the curse on the plane and this long thing. And then Loretta says, I don't believe in curses. And the other woman says, yeah, I don't either. But then Loretta looks really concerned. So like they both are living in this space where they're like between places, like they're in the United States, but they both are tied to Italy still. And they don't believe in curses. But one woman's like, you know, going through a lot of effort to do the curse and like explain why. And then the other one is like, I don't believe this, except obviously she kind of does because all she talks about is luck.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
she's obsessed with luck.
Yeah.
So like completely superstitious person, obviously.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like she's living in this space in between.
Where she's so practical, but also so superstitious just because it's part of her cultural ideology. That's gorgeous. Yeah.
So these are all elements of stories about immigrants. And you're right. The food is one of them. The like weird hybrid cultural stuff I love. That makes me happy. Just recently, my daughter, when I knocked on some wood, she was like, you don't actually believe that, right? And I was like, no, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to do it.
Exactly. That's very funny. There is one more line I really want to talk about. I can't believe I didn't mention it, which is Ronnie's line, we are here to ruin ourselves and break our own hearts and love the wrong people.
Yes.
That was unnecessarily gorgeous and romantic, which he occasionally did, which was such an interesting part of his character, is that he would go from being like this whiny, kind of intrusive, like very childish, immature man that I was just like, oh, I hate this guy. And then he would say something like that. And I'd be like, well, and I guess I'll follow you to the end of the world. I don't even know.
Well, but that's like Loretta, is that she's also, they're both finding themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're trying out different things, different tactics. And, you know, they both agreed and told each other that their tactics didn't work up until now, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing we can say about the two of them up until this point is that whatever they were doing has not been working out so well for them.
Was not working. Yeah. That's a great point.
And so, I mean, this is a beautiful thing about falling in love, is like just this like fumbling through and trying to figure out what this means for me, what this means for you, what this means for us, because now suddenly there is an us, even though you're like pretty much a stranger.
Right.
You know, just like, and that's a really neat contrast to like, we see all of these old established couples who know each other so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And who are kind of drifting in and out of each other. Which is really lovely. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I just, I don't know. I'm willing, and my biggest fear, if I'm being completely honest, my biggest fear coming into this film, which is an experience I've had with multiple films from my youth, when I go back and see them now, is that I don't like the sexual dynamics.
Oh,
and
sure.
then, like, suddenly I'm like, ah, shit, this thing that I thought was like this romantic scene is actually like kind of rapey, or like at the very least coercive. And I was like, please, when they turned it on, I was like, please don't be that. Please don't be that. Please. And it wasn't.
It wasn't that. No, it definitely wasn't.
Thank God. Some people in the 80s actually could make movies with consensual sex.
Yes, that's still very hot and very even male dominant. Like, he knocks over a table and carries her to bed, and it's still
but
super.
She yells at him right back, and then again, he's carrying to the bed, and she does say the oh God, but that's her judging herself. That wasn't her saying no, don't do this. And then
no, he even said the same thing. He was like, I can't believe this is happening.
Right? She absolutely verbally consents.
Yes.
Before they
what does she say? Leave him nothing to marry but the skin over my bones or something. You're like, Jesus. Nope. She's into this. There's no like, okay, I guess. I mean, that does make me feel good. There's none of that. Yeah.
None of that.
100%.
Right. She is right. And like he says, like the most dangerous thing for a woman like you is to play it safe. That's what he says to her also after the opera. Yeah. And he's right. I mean, they have each other's number so much.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
And that's part of their passion. And that's a beautiful thing.
That part of their relationship works for me so much. Like the passion, I suppose, between them is the best way to put it. Absolutely works for me and is gorgeous. I believe in them very much as a couple. I also liked how... I don't know exactly how to say it, but how much he just fit in with the family that first day he showed up. That's a great kitchen scene anyway. It's a great kitchen family scene. Like everyone's always trying to write those. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Right. That one 100% worked.
Well, so this is a question. This is something like I associate this. So that I wanted to talk about that, like the kitchen as the heart of the home.
Sure.
Like that is absolutely the case in this movie. And for me, I actually didn't grow up with a kitchen like that, but I had a lot of friends like this where like we would go to their houses and like just all of the socializing, multi-generational socializing would happen in the kitchen. Yeah, and the kitchen was absolutely where they had a living room, they had a dining room, but like everything actually happened in the kitchen all the time. And I always loved that. And I don't have an eat-in kitchen, but what I did was create a kitchen that is in my living room essentially. So
there you go. Yeah, that's great.
So it's like cooking and eating and all of that happens, in one space, like all the socializing and the food making and all of that. So I always think of this as like a very, again, these cultural groups thing. I don't know if that's true. Like that might just be because I grew up with it. So I decided it is that I just grew up with around a lot of people who had formal dining rooms that were never, ever used.
Sure, of course.
But what I love about it here is I love the choice that they made to have Ronnie come during the day. Like, come for breakfast. Come not at night. Not make it be this, like, nighttime dramatic
Moonstruck thing.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
The moon
like,
not at,
not at all that. And not this place for, like, a big family blow-up that would happen at night, right?
Yes, exactly. When everybody's fractured and tired. And
right.
Yes.
That he came in the morning. It's, like, the most domestic time. She offers him oatmeal. Like
perfect.
Right?
It's perfect. It's like, he's like, yeah, I love oatmeal. I'm sure it's going to be delicious. And some of it is just being really polite, but some of it is like, no, actually, yes, please. I do want oatmeal.
Well, and I think part of it is also him very much deliberately understanding that accepting that oatmeal is him being part of the family unit.
Yes, absolutely.
I think he knows the rules.
Absolutely. It's both sincere and respectful in a way that I just really liked.
Right. And so I love that. But I also love the moment the kitchen is established very early on when Loretta comes, her mom's asleep, her dad's, doing his, I guess, fearing death thing in the living room by himself. And she says, I have something to tell you. And he says, let's go to the kitchen. Like, that's what they do. She doesn't tell him there in the living room.
That's right. Yeah.
They go to the kitchen. Mm-hmm. He pours champagne. He doesn't know what she's
with
about
the
to
sugar cubes.
I love the champagne with the cubes. I have never.
Little...
Every time I watch this movie, I'm like, what? I got to try this. I have no idea what that's like. I've never done that. But it's like, I've only ever seen it in this movie, and I'm fascinated by it.
And I wonder if it's a thing that if it's a cultural thing that is just done, or if it's because it's cheaper champagne and this is just kind of a fun way to like. I have no idea. That's very interesting to me.
No idea.
It doesn't sound like a thing
definitely going to try it.
To say,
and I will report back to you. I have no idea what that's about, even though I don't.
Usually Italian champagne like Spumante is usually quite sweet anyway. So that was very interesting to me.
So so I just love that. It's just like the minute anything important is going to happen, we go to the heart of the home, which again, this is all about family.
Mm-hmm.
And, and remember like that they talked about whether they would move into their house, like, that this would be continue to be a multi-generational house potentially, even when Loretta's married.
Right. Yes. But she was saying we can't do that because Papa
her dad
Pop doesn't like Johnny. Yeah.
Right.
But he'll definitely like Ronnie.
So there's like a very good chance that Ronnie will end up living there with them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So it's just this neat. I mean, again, it's just like it's every element of this movie is just always kind of bringing you back in, bringing you into the fold of bringing you, I mean, not just other characters, but bringing us as the viewers into the fold of this family. Like I loved that, that the aunt and uncle came, because they were worried about the bank deposit. Like that served two purposes. It both showed us like, okay, that's it. Loretta was like definitely gone. Right? Because she was already forgetting about the bank deposit, and she went to the salon instead of like doing her duty and being her practical self. She went to the salon and did something for herself, for this other self.
Mm-hmm.
And it also brought the aunt and uncle there. Like they didn't need to be there for this end scene, but they did need to be there for this end scene. They all needed to be there.
Mm-hmm. It was lovely. Well, I think it harkens back to what we were talking about the John Mahoney character being left out there on the street, and when he saw the place and said, God, this is such a big house. And she said,
and I have a 1-bedroom apartment.
It's just a house. And he has a 1-bedroom apartment, like so many in New York. Yeah. But that difference between the individual and the family unit was really sharp. That was lovely.
Yep. I also like, this is just like now we're just doing like random things we like. I like that Ronnie's apartment isn't gross.
Yes.
Right?
That's a really good point, actually. I hadn't noticed it, but
he cares about beauty.
He does, yeah. And I loved it. Of course, he had the opera playing on the record player, which was gorgeous. Right. But you're totally right. That's really great. That was a nice touch that he didn't have this super gross bachelor pad with like not even a sheet on the mattress or whatever. Like it was cared for. That's a really good point. And it did grow him up a little bit, which I totally needed from him. Mm-hmm. I didn't even notice it, but had it been different, I would have been very angry. So yes, that's a really good note.
Well, and he's a man who like cares about the opera and will like and look beautiful. I love that she also tells him he looks beautiful because he did.
He did. Yeah, he did. Full tux. He was not messing around. That was fabulous.
Yeah. I love all those. My last random detail that I love is I love that at the intermission she is saying, I already brought this up, that she's saying I don't get it. And then then she's so moved by the opera. And I love that like he's clear, like their vernacular is very different. Like he seems like someone who's maybe had more of a cultural education than her, and she's speaking more in kind of a New York accent and all of that.
Yeah.
I love that she's then like analyzing it. She's totally starts analyzing the story.
Yeah. Yep. It's accessible. That's beautiful.
Right. Exactly. Just like when art moves you, don't need to be a person who had ever seen an opera or knew where the Met was. I love that whole thing. Like, she doesn't know where the Met is.
Met was. That was
And she's asking all the women in the salon, like have they been there? Do they know where it is? Like, so like there's this whole thing of showing how much she's going outside of her comfort zone on so many levels. Yeah. And yet
that is on my bucket list, I would say, to see an opera in a great city.
I know, and I didn't even take you. I mean, Lincoln Center sucks in the winter. Like, taking people to Lincoln, we've been to New York together twice, and I did not take you to Lincoln Center either of those times because it's not the same in the winter. But like,
I completely understand.
It is actually super magical to be in that big area with the fountain and stuff, and those, these gorgeous, like, these just pantheons to art, basically. You've got opera and the Philharmonic and the New York City Ballet there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Incredible.
It's a really gorgeous
we'll
place.
I
love it there.
Not in February.
Yes, sometimes we have to go to New York together. in the spring or in the fall, or summer's a little rough, but and
fall sounds really good to me. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and do that, and go to a ballet or to the opera.
That would be incredible.
It's a cool experience, no joke.
I'm sure. It really is. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Neely, Aunt Neely, who has taken me to those things.
That's so wonderful. Yep.
Okay, I think we're good. Did you want to tell me your favorite thing? I feel like I have already talked about all of my favorite things.
My favorite part I have already talked about, but I'll talk about it again, was, their first, that scene at the table where they're talking to one another, and then he knocks over the table and carries her to bed, was just, damn, that was really great. That was really good. And just those couple of, they are very high romance, high passion moments absolutely worked for me, and I enjoyed them very much.
I'm so pleased. I mean, I totally...
Yeah, I'm sure that you knew that. I'm sure that's not a surprise.
I did. Yep. I mean, again, I was concerned about what I guess I'm going to call stylized nature of the movie.
Sure.
I'm going to go with that over fairy tale or caricature, the stylized nature of it. That, it does... Yeah, it's not naturalistic.
Right.
Even in those moments, it's not naturalistic.
No, not at all. Yeah.
And so I didn't know how that was going to, how that note was going to hit for you. And I guess, I think that also is probably, I feel like I want to go back, feel like that was an integral part of storytelling in that period as well. Not needing things to feel like it's okay if they feel like a story. It's okay if we feel... I think that's very possible that many of my favorite stories from that period had those elements of just not needing to feel like we're, that we just happen to be viewing something that's actually happening, but for it to be okay for us to be viewing a story that is a constructed story.
Yes. A little bit surreal, a little bit magical. Yeah.
Yeah, but not in a fantasy sort of way. Not like magic realism or anything like that, but just, it's okay for it not to feel 100% real.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. It makes it lovely.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that's totally interesting. Okay. What's my favorite? I don't know. I've heard so many things now. I think just the way that, I'm just going to say, I'll do the really vague one this time, just the way that Loretta and Rose both speak. With this practicality that also has a lot of passion in it.
Mm-hmm. I can see
there's
that.
Just this matter of factness, and I think this is, like I had said earlier, that this thing in my family, the practical women and the. I think ultimately, and this is why I texted Neely, although this applies to her as well. This special breed of matter of factness from women who do know who they are. And I think that my grandma Sapora, Neely's mother, was that person. She was a very soft-spoken person, so she didn't have that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this sense that she just, her navigation was set in a way that she was very comfortable with. And so there's just this kind of matter-of-factness. That came from practicality, but was not devoid of emotion. She loved deeply, but she didn't show it in the way my grandfather did.
Interesting.
But her matter-of-factness was love for us.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely.
So, yeah. So I think that's my favorite part of this film.
How gorgeous.
All right. So we are going to do a special treat. Our next episode is actually going to be in 3 weeks, not 2, because of all sorts of scheduling stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we are going to have Lindsay Romaine back. She is now writing for Nerdist, and she is going to speak with us about the film The Favorite. We don't usually do this, of talking about a film that's actually in theaters right now.
Yeah.
I am very excited about this. I saw this movie partly because, knowing nothing about it, partly because Lindsay started tweeting about it, and I was like, what is this thing? Mm-hmm. And I went to go see it immediately, which is also something I don't necessarily usually do, and I've been thinking about this movie for over a month now, just all the time.
I'm looking forward to it. I haven't seen it yet, but I haven't been to a movie since I accompanied a couple of friends to Ant-Man and the Wasp.
That was a while ago.
That was a while ago. Yep, I'm a very bad film student when it comes to that sort of thing. But yes, this will be very good for me.
So we are going to watch that and talk with Lindsay about it, and I'm really looking forward to that. So
yes,
everyone go see it. It's been nominated for 10 Oscars. It and Roma. I was just so gratified. There were a lot of problems. I mean, people are always upset about things with the Oscars. I am also upset about certain things, but I'm so gratified that this film was nominated for 10 Oscars and that Roma is the other film that was nominated for 10 Oscars. There's just something really lovely about that. Yeah, so we're going to talk about it before the Oscars, so we won't yet know if it won anything. I have a feeling it's not going to win a lot, but I'm happy it got nominated.
Yeah, it's so hard to say.
Yeah, it is definitely hard to say. So yes, that's next up. So everyone go see The Favorite. You should actually go see it in a theater. It's gorgeous.
Okay. I'm so looking forward to it. Awesome.
Yay. All right. Well, and I think that's it for us for now.
Okay. Well, then until next time, I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive. Just Say Podcast is a Common Room Radio production. For more information and our other shows, visit commonroomradio.com. To show your support, pledges of as little as $1 a month can make a big difference. Visit patreon.com/commonroomradio to pledge support and access bonus features that are just for patrons. And join the conversation by using the hashtag #CanIJustSay and follow us on Twitter @JustSayPodcast. We request that you keep your tweets respectful and positive, and you can always email us at podcast@commonroomradio.com. Thanks for listening.